My name is James Humlin, and I would like to invite you to enter into a conversation with me. I'm 38 years old. I'm male, mostly Caucasian. I'm married to a beautiful wife, and I have two lovely daughters, ages 8 and 5. I work for a nonprofit in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, and I really hate politics. All the same, politics is what I want us to talk about. What I would like to do, if you will come along with me, is have conversations about what's going on in this great country of ours. I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions, and I am sure you all do too, and I really would look forward to having a national conversation where we really sit down and get to know each other and communicate our actual needs and thoughts. Now, before I get too far into this, I do need to provide a little bit of a disclaimer, and since I don't want to waste your time in any of these other videos, I'm just going to refer back to this one. So I'm going to ask you to bear with me one time, and you don't have to again. And if you choose to skip ahead a minute or so you don't have to listen to it, I totally understand. But do understand that the gist is I'm speaking for myself. And the words that I'm saying can't be used to hold any other organization, any other individual, anybody else at all liable for anything that I say. And we'll get into more details about that. Also, of course, I need to remind you that this is an individual intellectual copyrighted work, so please don't take it and do something bizarre with it without asking my permission first. I'm a very reasonable person, and I'll probably say yes, but you do need to ask. The longer version, for those of you who are still with me. I, James Michael Humlin, being of sound mind and body, hereby disclaim that any other organization can be held liable to any other opinion, statement, belief that I might put forth in this video series. They are my words and my opinions and my thoughts alone. They do not constitute the official line or official position of any other organization or body of which I am a member or employed, including but not limited to Family Bridges USA, the Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of the state of Illinois, the American Psychological Association, American Mensa, Trinity Roselle, or any other body. If you have any issues with anything that I say, bring them to me and let's talk about it, but don't hold it against anybody else. And this work is an original work and is copyrighted, and as previously stated, I would appreciate it if you want to reuse it in some way, shape, or form, just let me know, and I'd be perfectly willing to talk with you about that use. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. What can I say about the state of politics in this country right now? I think part of the reason that I really hate politics so much is that it is a force for division in this nation. And I don't think it's supposed to be. And I don't think it needs to be. But that's the way that it is right now. I think we see so much rhetoric, so much polemic, so much intentional division, so much use of language and words and images to try to drive us apart, and it just doesn't reflect the reality of this United States of America. We are not two separate countries. And we tried that in the 1800s. It didn't work out so good. We decided that we worked out our differences, some people more happily than others, but we came back together, and that's one of the beautiful things about American history. We have such a long history of facing difficult issues head on. Every generation has struggles with issues related to human rights, with issues related to good governance, proper character, good behavior, how to behave civilly. And every generation rises to their challenges and makes this nation greater for the next. And I don't want us to be the generation that screws that up. I have kids, and I know that I want to leave this place better than I found it. And I know my parents wanted the same for me. And I think that's a pretty common experience for us. The problem as I see it is so much of the political discussion that we see these days, so much of the conversation is driven by really extreme positions that are out of line with what the majority of people believe. And I'm coming at this from a background in psychology. So I'm trained a bit in statistics. A formal statistician would probably run rings around me, and I'm going to try to explain some very basic psychological statistical concepts in terms that are easily accessible for lay people, and I'm using them for examples. So if you want to take me to task for not doing a perfect job mathematically, feel free, but I want to make this easy to get to, all right? The way the polemic and the arguments are stated, you would think that America is, in fact, two separate countries, that you have Democrats and you have Republicans, and they are this far apart, and there's no one in the middle, and you're either with or for, or against, and there is no middle ground. And that just doesn't back up the reality that we see. The American population, like most things, is normally distributed. And in psychology, we call a normal distribution, or you may colloquially hear it as a bell graph, because it's shaped like a bell. And that means that there's more in the middle, and as you get farther out, there's less and less and less. And the practical upshot of this is, in a normally distributed population, there is approximately 72% of the population right here in the middle, just a little bit different from each other. Maybe you're leaning a little bit liberal, maybe you're leaning a little bit conservative, but at the end of the day, it's not that big a huge defining thing for you. But the rhetoric would have you believe that you're either all the way over here, or you're all the way over here, that you need to be on this side or on that side, and there is no choice in the middle. And that's just wrong. That's just not correct. When you look at its normal distribution, they have what we call a standard deviation. And bear with me, I know it's a big word. A lot of you have heard it before, some of you may not have. I'll explain it. The standard deviation is basically a unit of measurement, how far away you are from that average. Let's make a concrete example. Human males in the United States of America have an average height of around 5'8" inches. So that's the median, that's the average. A standard deviation is going to be a set distance away from that average. Let's say it's 6 inches. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but for the sake of this example, it'll work. If 5'8" is the median, one standard deviation below would be 5'2". One standard deviation above would be 6'4", and so on and so forth out to the tails. And the standard distribution lets us know that between that 5'2" value and that 6'4" value, we have about 72% of the population. When you get to the people who are out towards the tail ends, the people who are, 3'2", or the people who are 8'2", you're talking about less than 1% of the population. Now, they're still part of the population, absolutely. They are just as valid a member of the society as anybody else. Their opinions and thoughts are equally valid, but they do not represent the majority opinion. Now, to use this example a little bit further, I know this will sound a little ridiculous, but let's carry it, all right? If we're talking about height, and we're talking about people all the way out on the tails, we're saying in terms of national policy, we're going to have the people who are 3'2", who are looking at the world and saying, all this furniture is way too big, all these stairs are too far apart, I can't get in anywhere. We need to regulate this society to make sure that tables are shorter and stairs are narrower and chairs are higher, and then things would be great. We're at the other end. You got the people who are 8'2" saying, I keep hitting my head on the door frames, these stairs, I have to mince my steps to go up them. We need to have higher doors. We need to have higher tables. We need to have longer stairs that are taller so that I can be comfortable in the world. Those are valid viewpoints, but they do not apply the same way to 72% of people in the middle. It's just the numbers. The problem we face here in America is that the people on the tails lead the discussions. They run the discussions. And if we're sitting here constantly listening to the debate between feminazis on one hand and neo-Nazis on the other, we think there is no middle ground. There is no consensus. And it's just not true. Not only is there a consensus, the consensus is the majority. But the majority doesn't get fired up the way that the extremes do. And that's our detriment. What we need to do as a nation is look past the rhetoric, look past the extreme views and look at each other. Look at your friends, look at your neighbors, look at your coworkers, look at the people around you, and really talk to them. Engage with them. Politics doesn't have to be about us against them. It doesn't have to be this divisive force. It can and it should be this opportunity for us to come together, discuss real differences, and find solutions that work as best as they can for as many people as they can. That's the goal. I'm advocating for a sane and rational centrist position. And I know our friends across the pond have their own centrist party, and what I'm saying may or may not have anything to do with anything that party has to say in England. We have a long history in this country of taking the same words and meaning something completely different from what they mean in England. So with all due respect to our brethren across the sea, I'm going to take that word and I'm going to use it because it fits. And they're probably thinking center, C-E-N-T-R-E. I'm using C-E-N-T-E-R. There, we got a semantic. We're covered. We're good. If you look at who is in the center, if you look at those standard deviations, the guy who's 5'3" has more in common with the guy who's 5'7" on the other side, or sorry, 5'9" on the other side of that median line than he has with the guy who's 3 foot even. The guy who's 6'1" has more in common with the guy who's 5'4" than he has with the guy who's 10 feet. But they don't want you to see that. They want to be extreme. They want to polarize. They want to pull you apart. They want to use your extreme reaction to the, frankly, extreme position that the other side is espousing to get you to side with them. They don't want you to stop and think rationally. And what I am proposing, and what I would, I'm going to propose it as a centrist way of doing politics, but really anybody should do it this way. And I would be thrilled if hardcore Republicans and hardcore Democrats would embrace this philosophy. I think if we could all get on board with this, we would have a much more productive national dialogue. But to approach politics from a position of stop, think, talk, act. And I'll break that down. Stop. 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 When someone comes at you with an issue, when someone comes at you with a position, especially one that you disagree with, and you get that instant reaction, you get that feeling like your rage is boiling up, that passion comes out, and you just want to lash out and let them know how wrong they are. Stop. Even if you really strongly agree with something, you want to get out and say, yeah, cheer them, come on, you're doing the right thing, we're all behind. Stop. Stop. Let that moment of emotion pass. It's fair, it's valid, it's there, you experienced it. Don't react out of that emotion. Acknowledge it, and then think, why am I reacting that way? What in my experience makes me opposed to or in favor of this idea? Where am I coming from that makes this reaction make sense to me? Understand yourself. Know what your position is and why it is. And once you do, talk. Find your friends, find your family, find your coworkers, find a guy whose position you know you're not always in agreement with, and talk about it. Say, hey, I heard about this issue. This was what I was thinking about it, and here's why. What's your take? And if he's had that experience before, he can come back and respond to you. Maybe he needs to say, you know what? I need to think about that for a minute. I'm going to stop and think. I'll come back to you later, or we can talk about this tomorrow, but let's have a conversation about it. Because it's in those conversations that we get to know each other. It's in those conversations that we get to see we are not divided. In those conversations that we get to see that our friends and our neighbors are really pretty much the same way we are, despite what we might hear from any other source. And in those conversations, we start finding the ways to live with each other and to promote each other's interests. Finally, you need to act. It's not enough just to understand a position. It's not enough to know what should be done. It has to be done. once said that the only thing that is necessary for evil to win is for good men to do nothing. And I don't lightly like to throw around words like good and evil, but I would submit to you that the principle still obtains. That the only thing that needs to happen for wrong thinking to win the day is for right thinking people to do nothing. It's easier to do nothing. It's safer to do nothing. It's more comfortable to do nothing. To wait for somebody else to come along and fix the problem, because it's clear that this position is so extreme, and obviously everybody else around me knows it's too extreme, and everybody I talk to recognizes it's extreme, so clearly people are going to do something about it. The problem is the people who are most likely to be active, take the word activist, are the people out on the tails, the people who have the most extreme positions, the people who have the most passion, who are not coming from this position of rationality, who are not coming from this position of understanding, who are not coming from this position of compromise, but are coming from a position of my way, which is so diametrically opposed to their way, because we're comparing the tail to the tail again, that there can be no compromise. It's not true. But nothing's going to change if the people in the middle, who recognize that this is too extreme, do not stand up together and say, no, this is ridiculous. There is no reason that sane, rational people should be considering this course of action. We shouldn't even be having this conversation. Why is this going on? Why are we allowing this? Now, in the weeks to come, I'm going to come back to you guys and talk about current issues. I'm going to talk more about this philosophy of centrist activism, and I really would enjoy that you would come along on this conversation with me. I invite you all to leave comments. I invite you all to send me messages, call me up if you know my phone number. Let's talk about this. We need to get a national dialogue started. It's not about who talks to who. It's not about who's right, who's wrong. It's about the conversation. It's about setting the right rules for the conversation. It's about learning how to act with character, with respect, with decency. The heritage that our ancestors had. Our nation has made a lot of mistakes. It absolutely has. But not everything that has come before us is garbage. Not everything that we have done in the last 250 years is trash. This is one of the greatest experiments in representative democracy this world has ever known. This is one of the greatest test beds of developing equality, freedom, consensus, community. And we're lucky to have the opportunity to be a part of it. But it comes with some pretty heavy responsibilities. And part of those responsibilities, much as I may personally dislike it, is being involved in the political life of this country, is taking responsibility for current issues, is not waiting for somebody else to solve the problems, because you can't assume anybody else will, or that the people who are willing to step up and eager to go are the right people to be doing the job. It's up to us to take the accountability that needs to be there, to make the changes that we need to see, to make this country the great place it always has been. We don't need to make America great again. America is great. We need to own our greatness. We need to remember what is great about this country and make that part of us. We need to be proud of our history. Proud of who we are, proud of how far we've come and how far we're going to go together, because it doesn't matter who says what to make us think that we are divided. It's not true. We are the greatest nation that has ever existed on God's green earth, and it's up to us to live up to that history. I'm going to ask you guys to come along and join me. We will have more conversations again in the weeks to come. I do want to take just a moment this first week and leave a few dedications. And if you're done listening now, that's totally fine. I don't hold it against you, but I do want to thank my family for being very supportive and for helping to shape me into the person I am today. I do want to thank all those organizations whose opinions I do not represent because they are still formative in character building and they do still help me to identify who I am and be the person that I am. And a personal dedication, I'm going to dedicate this video to David Toledo, who was a co-worker of mine for the last several years. It was unfortunately leaving us now for bigger things. Say whatever else you like about it, Texas is big. But he is always pushing me to get on YouTube and do videos, and I never went along with it because I don't like being in the spotlight. I don't like putting myself out there, but I guess he was right. There is a time and a place that you need to stand up, that you need to speak. And I hope that you will come back and continue this conversation, that you will speak back to me. So this isn't entirely a one-sided thing, and that together we can really clarify what it is that we want for America, that our nation is going to be, and what it is that it is not going to be. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Thank you for giving me your time, and I'll see you next week.